Hi, Teacher Think and part three of parent conferences, and this is it because this is the end of it. You're basically finishing the conference, and this really ought to be quick because you, you basically just want to end on a good note. Thank the teacher. The teacher will thank you. You can talk about follow up. Now, follow up, I wanted to talk about a little bit more. How exactly do you follow up with a conference? You may not have had really any issues to talk about, and you don't have to feel like you ought to follow up if you don't need to. Not until it's really necessary. But if you've talked about some specific things, then maybe you can follow up with emails, maybe with a call. You want to see if things are anything's changing or improving or whatever. So that's all a good idea. Um, I would just want to mention a few things that you don't want to say to the teacher for numerous reasons, and most of them I think will be kind of obvious. But there are certain unreasonable or you know questionable requests that you shouldn't be making, and one of them is we told him that we'll take him to Disneyland if he gets all A's. I think you can see that puts a lot of pressure on the teacher. What if the teacher thinks he should get all A's and a B plus or an A minus? Does that count as all A's? That shouldn't be part of it. If you've got some reward like that, which I would not suggest anyway, rewarding for grades, then I would just not even mention that to the teacher. That's just going to that's between you and your child. That is not something that the teacher should have in the back of his mind. And even if you don't mean it that way, it'll look that way. Uh, and if you do have a deal like that, make sure your kid knows also not to tell the teacher because that's happened to me a few times. I will get to go to F1 racing if I get a B plus in something. Wink, wink. And they ought to know not to say that to a teacher. Another kind of unreasonable request it would be something like a daily call or even a weekly call because you might not be able to meet that. The parent or the teacher might not be able to honor that promise. Other things come up. There are other people in the class. There's no way you could call everybody in a week. So, hopefully not everybody would make that request, but it that's something that I myself would try to avoid is making a promise that, I will call you every Friday when we have art class because you've just committed that art class to a conversation with that parent kind of permanently and that you just might not be able to do that. And then at some point you're going to have to, it means you'll have to say, I can't keep calling you every Friday. Uh, one of the ones that's a little bit kind of something you want to hear even less is that say there's a say there's a say there's some sort of a bullying situation or somebody feels bullied. A lot of times kids will say that they're being bullied and they're really not. It's turned into such a catchphrase these days that anything can get cast as bullied. And I do think it's definitely overused because when you have a parent with a child who's done something wrong, they don't want to get their kid branded with the name bully. And they'll fight that tooth and nail. And I probably would too because that's like the kiss of death. And it's just a little bit too much these days. Kids do things that are wrong. It doesn't make them a terrible person forever. And not every little wrong thing somebody does to somebody else is bullying by any means. But sometimes you might hear something like, well, I told him that if that kid does something mean to him, he should just punch him right in the nose. And that really is good old-fashioned advice for your kid, what to do about that kid. But you know what that is? That's from like the 1850s, and there's a reason for it. It's because the kids would walk home from school, and there's nobody there supervising. And they're going to either stand up for themselves or run away. Theoretically, at school, there is somebody there who can help. Now, and I know that it is kind of bad that there is always somebody there to help, because sometimes they don't learn how to deal with their own problems. But if it comes to violence, it's, there should be somebody there. You should say something, deal with it in a different way. But one thing the teacher is not going to be able to do is endorse the idea of hitting another kid. It's just not possible. It's not going to happen. And you just should not ask for the teacher to agree to that. Dovetailing with that is the occasional parent will say, well, we're not like those other parents. I mean, you can do whatever you want to him to discipline him. We don't care if you even give him a slap over the head once in a while. Huge red flag for the teacher. It's not because they think that parent is, like abusing their children. But people who say stuff like that tend to be the ones who turn on you when the chips are down. They really do. So just conform to the norm. The school has ways of disciplining. Find out what those are. Deal with those. Don't push something like that on them, or say that it's okay if you break a norm like that, because they can't do it, first of all, anyway. So it's pointless to even mention it. But anyway, my experience is that when people start saying stuff like that, they tend to be ones who can turn on you. You don't want to say, well, you know what, if this still doesn't get better, I'm going to call the other parent. And nobody can stop you, but that really never helps. It really doesn't. It just gets everybody that much angrier. I just can't advise that one. Let's see here. I wrote a few things down, but that's pretty much it. The teacher wants to help your child. Just remember that, and the teacher knows that you want to help your child. They tend to realize that parents love their children and want the best for them, and they will work with you. They will work with you. At some point, I'm going to make a video about what to do if you really have a complaint about something, because they can happen. But the vast majority of the time, that's just not going to be a problem. And the more you can kind of nurture that relationship, the better an experience your child will have. So anyway, I hope we can end on a good note. Thank you. And we will see you next time.